besides our obvious history with race, it made me think, why is America so obsessed with race?
Because of the cognitive dissonance that a lot of Americans, especially Americans of color, tend to feel. We live in a country where we are told that the merit of our character, the merit of our work, is what will deliver us better outcomes. Everybody is told that. Everybody is taught that in school. But is that true? It's not. It's not true at all. We've all had managers, we've all had bosses, we've all met people who are incompetent morons, but have either kissed ass or have either simply been related or been friends with people in higher up positions, which facilitated them moving into higher up positions faster than you. But I am kind of curious as to see like what normal people's answers are. But okay. Let's go.
Do you make white jokes?
I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I've been guilty of it.
I don't think it's possible to be racist towards white people.
Racism was invented by white people.
What do you think it's more?
All right, both of those statements are incorrect, but I'm sure we'll get back to those.
To make jokes about white people
Because they make jokes about the rest of us.
White people have never gone through any oppression.
So the question I want to ask is it okay to be racist
Oh shit, I just realized this is like on... I was wondering, I was like, why is this so fast? Okay.
towards white people?
I still struggle with this myself. Despite their ancestral impact on America, it's not right to put all of them in that box.
I don't think.
Okay. All right, off the bat, the most reasonable take. I get it. History is what it is. But, like, these people were born in 2000. Can we not... Let's not bunch those together. Like, these aren't the same kinds of people.
Okay to be racist towards anyone. White people are still people.
It is possible to be racist towards white people as well, yes.
I don't think you can be racist towards
Also, the real question is when we say, like, racist, right? Like when people say, is it okay to be racist? The question that needs to get asked is, are we talking about... Are we like, I always wonder if we're talking about, oh, are you allowed to make white boys can't play basketball jokes? Like, is that okay? Is that like the severe racism that we're worried about? Or what are we more worried about? Because what I'm concerned when we talk about racism, what I'm concerned with are the reinforcement and proliferation of structures that bear down on groups of people for their inherent traits. A lot of this, what I think of is, the idea that, or as a good example, the joke that, like, black people love fried chicken, right? Which you might say, and everyone's like immediate response is, what the fuck do you mean? Who doesn't like fried chicken? The best fried chicken, first of all, is found in South Korea. What are we talking about here, right? But the reason why that's racist and the reason why that's not a joke that's not okay and not like something that people kind of whinge at is because it's reinforcing this stereotype that black people like fried chicken, which is not exactly the healthiest food. It's like fried chicken isn't really good for you, right? And generally, who eats like kind of the worst food in our society? Poor people. Poor people generally end up eating a lot more fried food and a lot more, kind of on the unhealthier side of our nutritional options in the United States. So when you make the joke of like, oh, like, black people, like fried chicken, right? What's the funny part about that? Is the funny part that they like fried chicken? Well, no, everyone likes fried chicken. The funny part, or at the very least, the element that you're like laughing at, the thing that you're hanging a lampshade on, the thing that you're trying to reveal, I suppose, is that black people like eating low quality food. That's why they all live in low cost neighborhoods surrounded by fast food. You see the joke, like, there isn't really anything funny about eating fried chicken. Fried chicken more is a commentary on the poor quality of food that a lot of poor people have, because white people like fried chicken, especially poor white people, but it's not used as a bludgeon against people. So like, I guess like when you watch videos like this, I wonder a lot of times what we mean, what people are thinking. Like when someone's like, is it okay to be racist? What are they thinking is the context of that, I guess. Because if it's just, if it's a white person can't tell a joke that somebody like Cat Williams makes. I can't name like a Cat Williams joke off the top of my head. But if if a white person made if a white person were to go and make a player haters ball. If you're not familiar what Players Haters Ball is, it is a sketch on the Chappelle Show from around, when was that? Like 2004 maybe? And it was a sketch where I think Ice-T was in it, but it was basically the sketch was about a convention held by basically haters, by these dudes who would wear these elaborate kind of like pimp ass looking outfits and like fry people up, make fun of them, and generally be kind of a hater, right? And part of that was, a lot of that is built on the I don't have a better term to say, but fry culture in in black popular culture, so we're talking about if you ever watch Wild and Out, like any of those type of shows, like where you're making fun of people, you're jabbing at people, all that sort of stuff, right? And the joke of that is, what if we took this entertainment, like the same way that people form communities and people have these tendencies, or maybe not tendencies, these habits or ways of speaking or ways of relating to each other in white communities, we'll say, over around, let's say, Star Trek, right? Because Star Trek has black people in it, but like, stuff like Star Trek, like nerd stuff, right? And what if we took that and framed it under the lens of something that black culture is more involved in, which is, again, kind of fry culture, and we just played that out to its most extreme extent? That's funny. But if a white guy wrote that sketch, would it be racist? Some people would say, yeah, it would be racist. Like a white guy making a sketch about a convention of a very kind of like stereotypical clever haters, but like dressed in pimp suits and that. Somebody would probably be like, is this like let me see if I can pull up a picture, then you'll kind of get what I mean. But like, Play a haters ball. God, I fucking love Player Haters Ball. Player Haters Ball is fucking hilarious. Let's see. Where's like the fucking fucking bro. God, this brings back so many memories. Image new it. There we go. Like, reduce this. Why is it so zoomed in? Pull that back. Yeah. So yeah, like this is what like one of the main dudes looks like. They all look like this. They wear ridiculous like pimp outfits and they fucking like fry each other up, right? If somebody was white and wrote this sketch, if there was a white dude who wrote this sketch, would that be racist? Even though there's nothing harmful about it, it is a like the joke of it is the absurdity that you would hold a convention the same way nerds hold conventions over Star Wars, over all of these things, and held it around something that's more aligned with like black culture. Like that's the joke of it, and taking that premise all the way to its extreme. What I call this, but I feel like people would call a white person coming up with this sketch racist, but it's not when it's somebody black. And it's only because, well, black people can make that joke because they're black, which I've never really understood, that where we gatekeep jokes to whatever community, like if you're in the community that you're making the joke about, that's okay, even though even black people have probably, like, I haven't watched a lot of comedy lately, but I am sure there are black comedians who have made jokes about and like and around the black community and them be harmful and in a racist kind of way. I'm sure it's happened. It's why people like sometimes get like touchy about the Boondocks, but like the Boondocks is fucking hilarious because the Boondocks again is kind of taking those scenarios, putting them the joke is that they all live in the suburbs and they all live in a different area with different context, meaning the vernacular and everything else seems so ridiculous, and like it's the ridiculousness of the situation that's funny, not that like, you know, black people are, you know, dumb or something. Like the Boondocks never makes that joke. But again, that's just kind of my thing. You know, a bit of an aside. But that's just my thing. Anyway, let's get back to the video.
White people.
What do you mean by that?
Racism was invented by white people?
Yeah, that's not true.
Take it out of historical context. So historically, there's been one race that has more power in the system. Racism was invented by white people to protect white power primarily.
I don't.
Right. Okay. So racism. So I understand what he's saying. Racism as a frame to look at the world, absolutely is not a white created thing. Mainly because the idea of discriminating against people on stereotypical or you know, like cultural lines is rather ubiquitous. Go to like Japan or even like South Korea as a good example. Not exactly the most unracist countries in the world, and yet there's not a large prominence of white folk either. We're simply talking about, when we talk about racism, it is very simply the idea and the ordering of people to favor one's race and to demean others, which almost all groups engage in one way or another. There are different what's the word? There are different you know, ethnicities within the continent of Africa who don't get along with each other and think that they're better than one's probably better than the other. I have no doubt that exists. The same way there are Americans who think Northerners are better than Southerners and Westerners are better than Northerners and Midwesterners are better than everybody. Like we always do this as people. We always do this. Is it a white thing? No. Now, if we're talking about the structures that we live in, yes, those were constructed by people who just so happen to be white. But that's not really a trait of white people. That's a trait of powerful people in this case.
I think it's possible to be racist towards white people. There needs to be a system of oppression. Generally, white people are the ones controlling that system of oppression.
Why do you think it's more accepted in society to make jokes about white people?
Because they make jokes about the rest of us constantly.
So do you feel like you have your guard up against white people?
Sometimes I do.
When white people are going through hardship,
Interesting.
they're not sensitive to it as you would be to a black community. In general, like white people, the privilege behind that.
You make white jokes?
I do sometimes. A little bit, but I'm trying to do better.
Because over the last few years,
yeah, like everyone, let's be clear. Let's be really clear. Everybody makes interracial jokes. Like everybody does that. The issue with the proliferation of some of those jokes, and depending on the intensity of those, is again a reinforcement of a hierarchy. Is kind of, you know, have you ever heard that thing where it's like it's all fun and games until somebody gets hurt? Like we've all heard that, right? And it's the same thing with making jokes, right? A joke is funny until it becomes a bludgeon against people. And for a lot of non-white communities in the United States specifically, jokes have traditionally been used as that bludgeon, as a evidentiary element to the reason why black people are poor, they live in worse neighborhoods, they're less healthy, all the rest of this stuff, because people made jokes about that stuff, and the jokes weren't really jokes, they were just laughing at other people's expense. There is a line to that. I think most people engage in a rather harmless version of, you know, ribbing other people, you know, stuff like that. There is a harmless level of that. But when your society is built in a way that tends to favor others because of just these structures that were built, then you find out that, oh, like white people making black jokes does create a little bit more harm, because when we decide, when people are deciding, oh, how do we plan this city or plan this town? How do we give out, grants, or do we grant this or that restaurant or this or that whatever, how do we grant this or that restaurant to build a restaurant in this area? You might have somebody who goes, well, I don't know if black people want the nice sushi restaurant in their neighborhood. That seems like more of an Asian or a white people thing that they would want. Black people, we're gonna have a lot of black people in this neighborhood. They probably want fried chicken and the rest of the spectrum of unhealthy fast food that they're kind of constantly grown up around. And you can kind of see how it is harmless from individuals, but with too much of that kind of rhetoric becomes a legitimizing factor to kind of set this group up to fail in one way or another.
There's a growing movement where we're telling white people not only to ignore, but to accept things that we would never say to another race.
Too many white people in here, and this is a space for people of color.
White women.
Cringe.
Progress is the goal, that we must acknowledge inconsistency.
Oh, hey, I've seen this video.
Call out the double standards.
Bro, you make fun of white people all the time.
I'm not a whitey. I mean, bro, dude, I'm just trying to make a video right now. But would questioning...
This feels like, this is like the other dude's video, but way more entertaining, and actually kind of seems to have some better points so far. So so far,
this
okay.
issue make me a white apologist or an Uncle Tom. But more importantly, am I making the problem worse by even talking about it? Guess we gonna see. How would you define racism?
I mean, I'm certainly glad that he's going out and actually talking to people, but I'm also glad that he's acknowledging, I'm not trying to defend these people. It's not, I don't have it's not like an attack, but it is a phenomenon that we should talk about, because it is not cool to be racist to anybody. But again, I say it again, there's a certain level of harm that you're creating that I don't think white people in general suffer from, because there's this or that joke. It's not cool. Don't be mean to people, but there's just not that weight bearing down on them the same way there are other groups.
Racism is judging or seeing yourself differently from somebody else because of the color of your skin.
I would just say preconceived notions about someone based on their skin color.
It's like a systemic system where basically people are starting off at a way different point because of the color of their skin.
Racism
Well, that would be systemic inequality, but yeah, fair enough.
Social structure exploits people based on their race. Globally, it seems like there's a lot of whiteness controlling racism.
Is it okay to be prejudiced towards white people then?
Sure.
Is it okay to have prejudice towards black people?
I mean, it's not okay, but I think racism describes a system of power.
So for some, it seems like racism is about punching down, but not punching up. But does that mean that as minorities, we don't have the power to discriminate? Let's see what the other side would say. A lot of people these days say that reverse racism doesn't exist. What do you think about that?
There's this belief that racism against the person who is most likely to conduct the racism doesn't make it racist, which is untrue.
If your definition of racism is purely systematic, no, I don't believe reverse racism can exist. If it's just a matter of discrimination, then yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, what we're talking, so what we're that is a wonderful way to actually frame that, because if we're talking about discrimination, absolutely anybody can engage in discrimination. But if we're talking about systemic oppression and systemic inequality, that is a case where, again, there is no systemic oppression or systemic unequalization of whites, of other groups over whites. It just isn't there, at least in the United States. Obviously in other countries, depending on the racial makeup, then yes, but if we're talking like the West and the US, then yeah, there's nothing bearing down on that group.
A racist brother, and he was indigenous. Just because you're a minority doesn't mean you don't hate.
Yeah, don't be an asshole to people. This should be pretty fundamental.
Do you think though at times people use that excuse of you can't be racist towards white people, and they mask hate with good intentions?
I listen to my friends
Absolutely.
who are people of color, and they tell me their experiences and how they feel, and I just try to understand the best that I can.
But today is a lot of the
That was not even an answer to the question, but yeah, people justify it however they can.
Or behind closed doors. So in order to address such issues, policies like affirmative action and racial quotas were introduced in the 60s to increase representations for historically disadvantaged groups.
In our time, change has come to this nation too.
As we see today,
is that LBJ?
controversy
I can't
remains.
remember.
affirmative action harms everybody, though in different ways.
As Thomas so well put it was a break from the
yes.
traditional justice of equal opportunity in applying the same rules for all to a shift towards cosmic justice with a focus on equalizing prospects and creating equality of outcome.
The requirement for treating everyone the same is very simple. It's mass-produced. The requirements for cosmic justice must be handmade and tailored to each individual case.
And so it raises the question, can both equality and equity even coexist? But what are your thoughts on, let's say, racial quotas or diversity hiring?
I feel like it's the case where it's a very fine balance, and also it doesn't help that there is a group of people, I'm not going to say what race they are, but I find that when I engage with this sort of stuff, there are people who will say, oh, you hired that black guy even though he's not qualified to, you know, over the white dude who is qualified, right? And there's always this, which initially I think that premise in and of itself comes from a place of insecurity and comes from a place of I think a bit of prejudice to make the assumption that a black person by definition you know, is less qualified, right? Because what affirmative action is looking to do, and also this is the difference with, I think, between kind of theory and, you know, it's the difference and the daylight between the system that you are trying to produce, the system that you are trying to forward, and the way that human beings, such that we are flawed, end up kind of interpreting that and practicing it in a way that you wouldn't have expected, or a way that you didn't initially intend. So when we talk about affirmative action, what affirmative action is looking to do is to take two people of equal qualification and weight the fact that a black person in the United States has a much lower chance of getting a, let's say, CEO position, right? Two people, exact same qualifications, but generally we find that because of these systems that we've built, that the white person gets picked over, not because of qualifications, but just kind of by cosmic happenstance. If there are, like, 10 black people who are applying to be a CEO and are qualified for it, and there are 10 white people who are qualified for it, applying to the same positions, the black people in that scenario, if they're at equal qualifications, should come out 50-50, right? But it doesn't. It comes out somewhere around 70-30, 80-20, maybe even 90-10 sometimes, if not just 10 to 0, 100 to nil, right? And what affirmative action is looking to do is address that by kind of pushing people towards, hey, if you've got somebody black and you've got somebody white and they are equally qualified, there is a suggestion of you should pick the black person for the simple fact that they probably had to go through a lot more to get to the position that they're in because of the system. It accounts for the system that we live in, right? But the problem is, and here's again the and that's how the system is supposed to work. But what we find is a lot of times there are scenarios where people hire black people who are less qualified because they want to do the right thing. And that's like, okay, that's a good thing to do. Does it happen often or even like a majority of the time? I don't really think so. I think these are a lot of edge cases of like, non-white people getting positions they didn't on paper deserve. I don't really think that's the norm. I would have to see data on that. But what we find, but like, has it happened before? Absolutely. Absolutely it's happened before. And you know what? That's human. That's being people. The best thing we can do is mold the systems that we live under in a way that will not favor one group over the other, right? But we obviously can't account for individual human error and individual humans either, not quite, overreaching with trying to do the right thing, or maybe even, underreaching. There will still be people who work in places who have affirmative action programs and still pick to hire mostly white people. They'll still do that because at the end of the day, you're not going to be like, the best thing you can do is address these systems, and at the very least put people of color in a scenario where they can achieve and can move into these higher up positions in society. Affirmative action has its problems, but I don't think any of it comes down its theory. From what I gather, it mostly comes from it's in practice. It's in practice. It being done in practice. I kept trying to think of a different word. But it just seems like humans aren't. It just seems like us as people are always going to make this mistake, or not quite follow the tenets, or always get it right. And I think that's okay. But some people make it out to be this slippery slope of soon there won't be any white people who can ever get a job because all the black people are going to be given jobs for no reason. And why as a white person should I go to school, get an education, and try to achieve if it's just going to be given to Tyrone, who didn't even finish school? And that's like a gross mischaracterization, along with just kind of being insecure about it. You don't have a right to any job to begin with. So again, I'm worried about the systems, but yeah, it's just all of this stuff. Anyway, let's continue.
In the context of jobs or university,
programs like affirmative action, I think, are necessary, and I think they've shown to be effective at balancing income inequality between races.
Job or opportunity should be given.
Even though, so I don't think when did you get in here? Okay, hi. I also don't really think, has income inequality been solved since affirmative action? I don't even really think that's been improved through affirmative action. It's not clear to me that we've solved income inequality, or it's been at least significantly improved through the implementation of affirmative action.
The person who's got the best skill.
I think a lot of the time the perception of diversity hire is that these people are unqualified, where in a lot of the times you're giving somebody the shot to show that they are qualified.
If they didn't have those quotas, then less black people would be in certain programs. If they were to get assessed, they say, okay, no, I have 5 Asians, I have 10 black people.
Isn't that discrimination though?
Of course it's discrimination, but it has to be this way because that's the world we have created.
I would point to things like...
It's also one of those cases where if you understand that the systems we live under are kind of built to discriminate and choose for certain groups and against other groups, I suppose one could argue that affirmative action is let's balance discrimination with a different form of discrimination, which I think that's a kind of fair, reductive, if not a bit reductive, summation of affirmative action. Which I have my issues with affirmative action, but I think this is why a focus on the systems, not so much trying to nibble around the edges and if we it kind of feels like that, if we need 10 fighter jet pilots, let's make sure one of them's gay. Even though to me, I'm like, we don't even need 10 fighter jet pilots to begin with. Can we do other things with that money? So it's just kind of a focus. I feel like we as a society need to focus more on the structure, on kind of the superstructure of how our society is built and the biases that are built into that system.
The Harvard scandal were really, really qualified Asian kids, so they're getting left out. You can have a shitty doctor because somebody got into med school, but their scores weren't that great. But I believe in quality of opportunity, not equality of outcome. I think that's Marxist. And
yeah. Okay, so this is immediately... Okay, so the reason why this bald guy is bald is because he's a miserable piece of shit. Which I'm going to be a little bit mean here, mainly because he's arguing. His initial argument is that the person who got in isn't qualified. Let's go back really quickly.
We're really, really qualified Asian kids, so they're getting left out. You can have a shitty doctor because somebody got into med school, but their scores weren't that great.
So the assumption that somebody would get into med school with their scores not being great is in and of itself, I'm not sure if it's, let's be honest. He's talking about doctors who probably are black. that in and of it, that would be an example of racism, assuming he's talking about another group, in which case it's just discrimination, but probably racism in some other way. But at the end of the day, he has no evidence to say that, oh, their scores weren't that great or their scores were bad. He's characterizing this in a way that's like, oh yeah, we didn't let the really smart Asian kids be doctors because we let the dumb, the not as smart blacks get in and take their spot. Like, to me, like that immediate, when you come to it as degrading the person who got in and mischaracterizing or trying to characterize an entire group of people's acumen for whatever like topic, that tells me that you have a generally negative view on that group of people. Like you don't think that a black person could be just as qualified as, an Asian kid. And even if it's like, if it's like a 2 percentage point difference, I don't really see the problem with that. If we're talking like fucking shades of gray, then I am kind of like, all right, if Harvard, I think it was Harvard, if Harvard has a really low black population and there are people who would fit into that educational standard who are black, and there's already a large cohort of Asian students, then sure, like, let more black people in. But here's the key. We can talk about all of this. Right? We can do the whole like, oh, should we let more black people in even though there are Asians who are, we can do all of this, right? But this is what I mean by getting distracted with that, because the actual answer to this is fix the college system. Have people not be competing for so few spots, and not have spots in college for a tertiary education be gatekept behind either amazing grades. To, if you want to actually afford it, you need to get either amazing grades and scholarships, or you need to be rich. If you are poor, regardless of what race you are, you will not be able to participate. You will not be able to take advantage of our excellent tertiary education systems. Just plain and simple. You just don't get to if you're poor. And if you don't get or if you don't get amazing grades, if you're not like out competing everybody in your school. We need to turn education less into a competition and more into a resource for people to use. This is what I mean by like the structure that we need to attack is the educational system. The rest of this stuff is band-aids for the system we have. I want a fundamentally different system.
But I believe in equality of opportunity, not equality of outcome. I think that's Marxist, and you can only enforce that with a gun.
That's not Marxist, also, but that guy's old as fuck.
Who
but
is definitely a minority with only 6% in America. In that sense,
which isn't
more division?
I only know what I've read, and
that guy doesn't know what Marxism is.
For helping historically underprivileged races,
especially for my people, for 400+ years, we've been discriminated against and not given opportunities.
I think that there's
people were second-class citizens till like 60 years ago.
Bring people into certain opportunities or certain institutions simply because of their skin color, and you could even argue that itself inherently could be a bit racist.
It's reasonable to have equal amount of different races involved in the workplace, but is it achievable the way we're doing it right now? No, I don't think it is.
So if achieving both is impossible, is the pursuit of inclusion actually creating more division? Because if measures are becoming more extreme and opportunities are given solely based on race, isn't it just gonna go back to the same? Again,
I don't like that characterization, because I don't think there are hiring decisions. There are not firms who are hiring people. There are not businesses who are hiring people who get 2 resumes. One of them is blank and the person's black, and one of them is like a normal, they worked a couple jobs and it's like a white guy, and no hiring no HR person is like the black guy. It just doesn't happen. That person, for that to happen, whoever went into interview would have to be dog shit on the resume side. Somebody would have to be like, I'm not sure about this person. They seem like a psychopath. There'd have to be a lot of red flags. Whereas if you go into a job with no resume, depending on what it is, you could get those jobs. But if it's something higher up, they're probably going to say no, because taking anybody with some kind of experience, they're going to want over. So I think that's an unfair characterization, especially to extrapolate that across the entire economy, which I don't think is even close to happening.
same equality we sought to address.
Diversity matters.
And does that include for Asian Americans?
I'm not putting my personal opinion.
As he was fired for being a white male to diversify leadership positions.
So besides our obvious history with race, it made me think, why is America so obsessed with race and racism? Do you think talking about race...
Well, there's actually a really easy answer to that one. And the reason why our society is so interested and so fixated on race is because we have structure. So it's because of the cognitive dissonance that a lot of Americans, especially Americans of color, tend to feel. We live in a country where we are told that the merit of our character, the merit of our work is what will deliver us better outcomes. Everybody is told that. Everybody is taught that in school. But is that true? It's not. It's not true at all. We've all had managers, we've all had bosses, we've all met people who are incompetent morons, but have either kissed ass or have either simply been related or been friends with people in higher up positions, which facilitated them moving into higher up positions faster than you or over. Like merit, the meritocracy being a myth and being something that I think most Americans understand. If you've ever heard the phrase, it's not about what you know, it's who you know, you immediately know that the meritocracy is bullshit. So the dissonance created in a lot of people's minds is the fact that we're told every day that our system, our everything, our society is based on merit. Yet every day we find example after example after example of groups not making it due to their marital or their is there a adjective sense to that? I don't know. Due to their group's merit, their group's hard work, it just comes down to, if you live in a poor neighborhood, you're probably going to stay there. And if the groups that live in those neighborhoods are shockingly of a certain race, you might notice that, like, hey, why, if everything's based on merit, why does nobody make it out of our neighborhood? Why is it like nothing ever gets fixed in here? Why are the potholes always, always on 5th Street? They never fucking move. They just get deeper and deeper and deeper. And you come to find out, shit, I don't live in a meritocracy. I live in rugged capitalism where nothing gets fixed, nothing gets done unless somebody makes money off of it.
Racism helps the problem or makes the problem worse?
I think talking about it with different sets of ideals hopefully pushes the conversation forward a little bit. Getting your worldview shattered and smashed to shit is sometimes good.
White people should be talking more about race. In my social settings with white friends, it isn't brought up enough.
I think there's a certain level of awareness that needs to be raised. However, bringing it up in the context of us versus them, I think that itself contributes to racism.
If we keep talking about it, eventually...
And absolutely, affirmative action creates, at the very least in one group, a us versus them relationship.
Be just one-sided, left or right. I feel like there's always a middle ground.
People recycle the same bullshit topics, but no one's talking about love.
Do you think minorities blame white
True.
people too much?
Yes, 100% they do, because it's an
Oh,
excuse.
Why the fuck
absolutely.
are we talking about how we can connect more and actually
I need
learn
this
about
is
each other? Why?
and again, this is what I mean. I need people to stop talking about white people and start just talking about structures. That's what I want. I want structures to be attacked.
It always the problem we talking about. Why not the solution?
Now, this may sound wild, but has this obsession with race created an environment where woke people and racists are becoming the same thing? Because if it's true, perhaps one of the first signs was seen 6 years ago in this small college in Washington. The annual day of absence at Evergreen State College involved minority students leaving campus for the day to raise awareness of their contributions. But then in 2017, organizers decided to reverse the roles and ask white students and faculty to leave campus instead.
Get out! It's not helpful. Get out!
Brett Weinstein, a white professor, objected, citing these demands as forced segregation and discriminatory. And soon after, Weinstein's objections were met with protests and accusations of racism as student activists called for his resignation for promoting white supremacy.
Oh, is this why this guy is this why this guy's like a hero for the right wing? Which, by the way, like I haven't paid too much attention to Brett Weinstein, but like if this was what made him famous, cool. But I find people like will do the like Brett Weinstein, doctor, da 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 da, and like people went to him for like COVID advice, which I don't believe he has a like an epidemiology degree or whatever. So sometimes we all need to understand that people are good at one thing and not good at others. Just because you're smart in one case doesn't really make you universally smart. I think we've kind of come to understand that a little bit. But you know,
I'm not interested in debate. I'm interested only in dialectic, which does mean I listen to you and you listen to me.
Eventually,
I mean, I think you should be open to debate. I guess dialectic is whatever. It's semantic
his
bullshit.
wife resigned from their positions and filed a lawsuit, which was eventually settled for $500K.
Damn, my dude made money off of
May
this.
have genuinely
Man,
felt that they were advocating for
Man.
inclusion. Reality is that they were promoting exclusion based on race.
That's how whiteness works.
Yes.
Whiteness is the most violent system to ever breathe.
Frankly,
And keep in mind when they say that. So here's the problem. When people say whiteness, when people like denounce whiteness, what they're actually referring to is the structure of race in terms of how we socially constructed in our mind. So they're thinking about like all of these structures that favor white people by the fact that they were written for people of a certain skin tone and of a certain cultural background. Keep in mind, remember all the time that whiteness is broadly defined and broadly is vaguely defined and broadly what's the word, identified, right? Like what is white is like, you know, am I, let's see, am I white? This is like rather light skin, but then this is dark. So like, you know, where white begins and everything else starts is arbitrary, right? It's utterly arbitrary. So what it ends up being is a lot of cultural norms or maybe some like cultural similarities. A lot of people cite Western civilization, which is again kind of a catch-all term for anything west of whatever line, I think, wherever people think Eastern Europe ends and Western Europe begins, which again is arbitrarily decided. But my point being is that when people do like the whiteness was bad, that's what they're thinking. I think that's what their brain is thinking of those structures, but it's not what they're communicating. And that's the problem we have, is people use whiteness as the same term to describe people who are white. And I think that is harmful, and also it's a lack of having, I think, different language for different phenomenons. That's like the big thing. Like, I understand when they're like, whiteness is the structure of this, but at the end of the day, you have to work to not extrapolate that to individuals. It is the next step of that. That is the part that you have to be cognizant of, that you are not lumping, white people in with whiteness, because the structure of whiteness, by the way, bear down on like the Irish and the Italians before they were accepted into it. Whiteness as a concept is not something that's never borne down on a group that is now considered white.
Every student in that hallway has a clue about where they're going wrong.
And so are we continuing to head down a path of revenge masked as equality? Because as it stands, is it fair to generalize an entire group based
what separates whiteness from white people? Isn't that the Michael Knowles separating trans people? No. Okay, so the difference between, this is what I was saying. I think you came in like in the middle of my whole spiel. But whiteness, so when we talk about whiteness, when people refer to whiteness, they're talking about these superstructures that were built into the like foundation of this country. So they're talking about 3/5 compromise sort of stuff, and also when they talk about the white hegemon, it's the biases and the preferences of a certain class of Americans, right? Now that structure is important to recognize. Unfortunately, we don't really have a term, or there's not a term that's frequently used to describe that, separated from the race of people that it's advocating for, which I think there should be a delineation between those two, or I don't know if delineation is the word, but there should be a separation of those two, because being white is it's just your melanin count. It doesn't mean all that much, at least in my opinion. My parents are white. But they're they come from like poor ass Pennsylvania, and like, you know, they lived their lives, worked jobs, did all the stuff, everything else. Now, the structure that they lived on afforded them the ability to do so rather easily. But that structure isn't inherent to them, and that structure isn't, it's not an essential trait of being white. It's just a cultural, I mean, not cultural, a societal trait, or a societal, I guess to kind of refer to like RPGs. It's like a societal boost. Like you just get a boost in your luck attribute a little bit, because of the way the society was built. But it's not like inherent to you. You know, it's structurally built
based on the actions of a few in the past.
Sure, I actually think that's a really interesting question because there's a lot of research coming out about how trauma is intergenerational. So even though you may not have experienced something if your parents did, if they ever shared that story with you, you might have that ingrained memory somewhere.
Okay, well then how about this? Like, I'm Japanese American, right? Do you think then like Americans should judge the actions of my ancestors, let's say, on me?
I think it's important that like people have this type of dialogue, why they think a certain way, why they hold certain beliefs, and that's the only way we're going to be able to move forward as a society.
Okay, but what if we take a completely different approach to it? Do you think it's okay to be racist if you're equally racist to everyone?
That's correct.
Equal opportunity racist?
Equal opportunity racism.
Oh, this is always the like fun one.
Recently is they want to learn more about culture so they can be more accurate in their racism.
Shut up.
Why do you think I'm traveling right now?
That is straight dedication.
Kidding aside, is saying that we don't have the power to discriminate as minorities using victimhood to actually discriminate?
Utter nonsense.
On the other hand, is this overcorrection necessary to correct the wrongs of the past? And it seems like that's exactly what Hollywood is doing. Whether it be Indian Velma or Black Annie, a recent trend has been replacing...
No. Okay. So I disagree with this wholeheartedly, mainly because nobody is harmed by any of these things. Like nothing's lost in like the diversification of media. There isn't the same way there isn't a loss in the diversification of media the same way there is in terms of professional opportunity. Like if you can't get a job, right, then you can't exist in the society. You're fucked. You're poor. You can't pay for housing. You can't pay for food, or the food you can pay for is really bad for you. But like just because there are black people, there's a black person that's Ariel now. Nobody is hurt by this.
Originally white characters with minorities in the name of diversity. The power of media cannot be ignored. Do you think that's a good way to increase representation amongst minorities, or do you think that's a bit lazy?
Anytime that we try
it's
to
lazy and harmless.
Increase visible minority representation in the media is a good thing.
Maybe it's forceful diversity, people trying too hard to be inclusive and all that.
Honestly speaking, I can't say that I looked to Disney characters or other characters to see what opportunities exist for me. However, being able to see other women of color in positions of power, whether it be in the legal force, whether it be in politics, was something that did open my eyes to the opportunities that are possible.
Yes, I'm a black woman, but when they create these shows, it's like almost so far gone for me. I don't care what my skin color is. I know who I am.
I think it's pandering a lot of the time. When it's just you swap out a character, you don't change the dialogue, and you say they're black now, and then you try to make yourself look.
Yeah, it's absolutely lazy. Also, whoa. Michael B. Jordan is always a better pick for any role. We need to put race aside here. Michael B. Jordan is amazing. Let him be every fucking Marvel character for all I care.
It's a good point, because does Hollywood genuinely care about amplifying minorities?
Fucking Michelle,
voices,
yo.
or is it about the woke points? Don't you think it would also just be more effective if we actually just told real stories of minorities, of like actual people, instead of just replacing it with a traditionally white character?
Matt Damon, who was in the Great Wall of China, and everyone was so offended. Why is it him?
Scarlett Johansson played like an Asian girl.
I mean, it's also, he's playing like a white guy. I don't think I don't know. I didn't see The Great Wall. I heard it's actually a pretty fun movie. But yeah, like that one wouldn't be a problem. Scarlett Johansson playing the major. Yeah, I'm not crazy. Yeah, I've seen the movie. I don't hate it, but I definitely don't love it. But yeah, that's probably a case where you had a genre of film that what's the word I'm looking for? That was like culturally set in around Eastern culture. So there is an argument for that. I think a little bit more than others. And also that story, like Ghost in the Shell from a live action standpoint hasn't been told yet, so it'd be nice to get a accurate adaptation. Whereas The Little Mermaid, we've already had a couple adaptations. It's also a rather old story. Like if I remember correctly, like a lot of the Disney stuff is what's the thing, open source now? Is that open source? No, open source is for fucking software. Oh, what is it? Whatever. It's old enough to the point that you don't have to pay for the rights and anything. So like that's a different case where I think people should have all the space in the world to reinterpret, change, mess around with all of these kind of like ancient ass stories. We had that Winnie the Pooh movie that came out recently. That was like a horror movie that was ass because Winnie the Pooh became public domain. That's what it is. Became public domain. And like, do I like seeing Winnie the Pooh in a horror setting? Not 100%, but like, it's not mine anymore. It's everybody's. So I think everyone should get to interpret it however they want.
So it's like, is it because she's a better actress?
No, it ain't just you. And if they're, I'll be honest.
And that's exactly why we
I'll be honest.
Because besides
she's the best. Not from acting standpoint, not a great part of that movie. But Scarlett Johansson in the major. I wasn't.
With white people.
Story wasn't great.
It's shifted to ignorant.
I keep dithering because I'm just gonna agree with you. Scarlett Johansson. Positive notes from me.
Portrayals of white people while still continuing to focus on our differences rather than our similarities.
Fucking Get Out's great.
Cis men who are the least grounded, most destructive.
This is just
how you view society. We're being taught that every society,
which also I do think it's a little unfair to pop up videos about like that show like people of color complaining about white people. And like pretending that that is a one-way street. Trust me, if you go to the right corners of the internet, there is absolutely a market for I don't like being around black people. Like there has been historically in the US a large market for I don't like being around black people rhetoric. That still lives on today. So I don't think it's as fair to be like, look at all these TikToks I found, which I'm like, yeah, those are bad, but to pretend that this antipathy is only coming from one side is not dishonest, but it's just a bit unfair, I think, of a critique to levy.
Ill is the fall of whites, and that as minorities, we can say whatever the hell we want about white people.
White people cooking jokes are also perfectly fine.
Is the solution to a more equal society. But what I realized is that this whole time, we weren't even looking at the right problem. What do you think is a bigger problem, racial or income differences?
I would say that income inequality would be worse because I think that if we were to be able to fix that somehow, then it could fix a lot of the other issues.
Yes. Okay. I'm glad. I'm so glad he got onto this topic because this is the superstructure that we need to fix.
It's not on the level of like people who can't eat.
I think the discrepancy.
Yeah. The problem is racism reinforces the legitimization of the systems that keep us unequal.
Racial, absolutely. Like racial inequality follows income inequality.
I think it's still
I think it's the other way around.
At the end of the day,
I think it's the other way around.
To the income and everything else that goes on, like the opportunities that we have, I think it all plays into it. So
there's relative poverty and there's abject poverty. In the West, I don't think we have abject poverty, but people that are down and don't want to get up and work, go bust your ass, man. Very few people.
Yeah, this guy's just racist. I'm sorry. This bald man is just racist.
People that are busting their ass, I would say most of them are probably getting someplace.
He just watches a lot of Fox News and is like, black people are lazy, get off your ass.
For example, like LeBron James' son. Do you think he probably was born in a better position than, let's say, like a poor white kid in the trailer park?
I feel like that's different. You can't compare the two because at the end of the day, he is a black man. He still is viewed as a black man in society.
Having more money would help you get along better. You can have power and still...
Certainly being wealthy insulates you from a lot of the negative recourses of like systemic racism. Like you dodge a lot of those bullets. You certainly don't dodge interpersonal racism, but being rich basically insulates you from any of the systemic racism that like LeBron probably faced growing up.
be a victim of racism.
Is it no matter whichever issue is worse, why do we always hear about one but not the other? Why do you think like in the news, like we hear more instances of, I feel like a lot of the rhetoric in the media today is around racial wars.
It's a way of grasping at straws and dealing simply with very complex issues. But the big issue is poverty and overpopulation.
People who are in charge of portraying things in the
Say
media probably very well
overpopulation?
themselves, right? They don't want to shine a light on inequality.
Racism seems a lot more visual. It's visual.
Yeah, you get that outrage response with racism. It's easy to be like, that person.
And when the focus is on differences, that's all we start seeing.
Oh,
Since
no, not the Dilbert
1989,
guy.
Scott Adams has been best known for his newspaper comic Dilbert, as well as his books and live streams on social and political issues. However, on February 22nd of this year, it all came crashing down.
This is the first
Oh,
political
I've seen
poll that
this,
ever
yeah.
changed my activities.
On his live stream, Adams responded to a poll that asked black respondents if it was okay to be white, and the results show that
Wait, no, I want to. I've seen the
53%
question. It's
said
yeah.
yes, while 26% disagreed and 21% were not sure.
So if nearly half of all blacks are not okay with white people, that's a hate group. And I don't want to have anything to do with it, based on the current way things are going. The best advice I would give to white people is to get the hell away from black people.
Newspapers across the country
Jesus
are dropping
Christ.
the Dilbert comics.
There's a line that
Yeah,
gets crossed.
What do you say to people who heard that and say, Scott Adams is racist? Are you?
This prompted several newspapers to drop the strip and his publisher to cancel
What? He's not on CNN anymore. Am I crazy?
his upcoming book. In a
Maybe
separate
he's
stream,
somewhere else.
Adams defended his remarks as hyperbole, and that the cancellation was based on out-of-context statements.
If you listen to it in context, it makes perfect sense. Did I espouse racism with white people? That's a hate group. And I don't want to have anything to do with it, based on the current way things are going. The best advice I would give to white people.
And that the cancellation was based
The poll that did in Dilbert creator Scott Adams is even dumber than you can imagine. Can I see the poll really quickly? I know it's Rasmussen. Is that what it is? I think that's what it is. Yeah. Okay to be white. Pretty sure I can find this. Here it is. All right, here we go. Or maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe not. Oh, this is the no. I don't want that. Include. Okay, fine. Sure. Okay, it's okay to be white. Agrees 72%, including 53% of blacks. Wait, but huh? Wait. This can't be the same thing he's talking about, right? No, this was earlier. Show me. No. Show me the one. What's Twitter? Black American. No. Where is it? 2 edgy poll results. Only 54% think it's okay to be white. That has to. It's that one, right? Can I see a thing? The poll that did in Dilbert creators even dumber. The poll. Let me see if I can find that one. The poll that did in Dilbert. Okay. The poll that did in. Okay, here we go. Hopefully they have a link to the actual poll because I want to see. I want to see the language because I remember seeing that the language was not as was not quite as oh dude, what is this? Times it's called dubious sampling and weighting techniques. Rasmussen's results are often an outlier when it comes to, say, presidential approval numbers, as when Donald Trump famously cited a Rasmussen poll. Oh, that it is a right-wing poll. That is true. Pollster. But no. Okay, it's okay to be white. 72% of Americans agreed. 12 disagreed. 69% of Democrats agreed. Black people can be racist too. 79%. Do you guys is the link for the fucking poll actually in here? Did you guys link the poll? This publisher, nightly live stream, murky methods. Seriously, give me the poll. Party link report offense. Okay, no discussion. YouTube Rasmussen reports. Is it? I guess it's this one. This one, right? No. Okay, no. This is some YouTube shit. God damn it! I just wanted to see the. Maybe it is this. Or well, no. Wait. Crossbars, cross tabs, maybe. Nope. I need a platinum account. What is this? Where's the freedom? Okay, and latest, here we go. This. Oh, you're not gonna let me read it, are you? Okay, well, I guess we're not gonna get more information on that one. That's okay.
Based on
shit happens.
out-of-context statements.
If you listen to it in context, it makes perfect sense. Did I espouse racism, or did I say you should try to get away from it?
He explains further that corporate influences are creating a
Oh, this isn't CNN. Okay, I thought.
collective narrative that people are racist, and there's some amount of the black population that's poisoned.
They're just poisoned by the narrative. They are victims.
He further clarified his points that white Americans are demonized by the collective forces.
So wherever there are groups of people who have been programmed by the media to have a reflexive bad feeling about you, I would avoid them.
And so with further context, does he have a point?
Every time we treat
Also, I just want to say, if you're trying to decide where to live, I don't really think basing it on like Rasmussen polling, where like, oh, should I move into this neighborhood? There's like a black neighbor. Rasmussen says there's like a 42% chance that that he might not like me, which again, that wasn't actually, so from what I understood and from what I remember the question being, the question was, do you agree, like if you agree with the statement, like it's okay to be white or something? I need to find it. If I can find it, I'll show it on stream. But I want to find the actual language.
If you look at class, it explains everything.
Are we being taught through the cycle of negative media to hate one another, and that it was always about the money?
Especially in America, I think that the foundation is built upon differences, and that's not right. I think it's on purpose. It's perpetuated through the media, through separation, through stereotypes.
This is
yeah,
true.
Purposefully, we're all too mean to each other and focused on how we're not similar when we are.
And so if we want more unity, we must prioritize accountability. Because ironically, it's those who claim to be the most open-minded that's actually the most closed-minded. And it's exactly why the line between woke people and racists are becoming the same thing. Do you think that's the best way to achieve equality, is through hate?
Unfortunately, I find that
you can't have those two words in the
we
same
run into
sentence,
the
equality
what
and
is a
hate.
woke person
Because if
thing,
equality is
but
achievable,
we should
it's
kind of
never through hate. But instead, it's
Yeah,
about looking inwards and having conversations to find common ground. Because if we truly care about an issue, we must acknowledge the good and also address the bad and sometimes the ugly. And that's exactly the mission, to explore the unfamiliar. Thanks for watching, and subscribe if you want to see more content where I turn street interviews into investigative journalism. And if YouTube...
Solid channel. I really like that. I think that took a pretty good approach. I disagreed slightly, but overall there is a certain amount of a certain amount of nuance that I think that brought to it. It was a lot better than like that video that got really big. But this is, if I remember correctly, yeah. If nearly this question, reports the news, it's in our polls, right. Mitchell noted that the ADL has labeled "It's okay to be white" as a hate slogan, and the organization traced the phrase back to origins to trolling campaign on the discussion forum 4chan, whether the original trollers were white supremacists or not actual white supremacists, quickly began to promote the campaign often. So it's a case that, like, if you're saying like, oh, it's okay to be white, if that's kind of known to be a like racialized term or a like white supremacist slogan, then there's a good chance that, like, if you don't account for that context, that, wait a minute, was that door open earlier? I don't know if it was. But if you don't account for that context, then you're going to catch people who are aware of it and not know exactly what you're talking about. Like who might identify that by its like trolling campaign and not by the, you know, is it okay to be white, which there really is no, I don't really know how you answer, is it okay to be white? You either are or you aren't. There is no moral weight to that sort of thing. Nearly half of all blacks are not okay with white people. And that's not what it's asking. Like that's not, that wasn't exactly what I was asking. I wish I could find it, but I think it's behind a fucking paywall. But yeah, either way. Homeboy will do perfectly fine. He will be all right, I think. The thing that they tell, like at the end of all YouTube videos where they tell you to like click on one of these like things to watch more videos. Yeah, I've been meaning to film one of those. So that's what I was doing. I was just setting it up to film one.